All right, who we have here is Sean Coffey from Ritchey, and they're actually our neighbors in Redwood City. You know, we work just 2-3 miles from each other, and I'm surprised to see him here. And they have a beautiful bike to show us. So, Sean, tell us about Ritchey's frame building legacy and what you're planning to do with it.
Tom Ritchey started building frames, this being the handmade show. He's got a valid place here as much as anybody. He started building custom frames when he was 17 years old, sometime in the very early 70s, and he's been building frames ever since. This is the latest. This is the P-29er. The name harkens from some of his most famous bikes, the P-23 series, P-22, P-21, some of the winningest mountain bikes in World Cup history. The P-29er is Tom's first so-called 29er, although there's a funny story about that. And this frame is 100% fillet brazed by Tom himself. Tom still builds frames from his workshop up on Skyline Boulevard on the peninsula. He's never stopped. He's known for his fillet brazing the world over. He's also known, and he's innovated a number of tubing features, which a lot of these bikes here you'd notice that differentially butted tubing, directionally butted tubing, some of these things that he's developed where you've got butting that's thicker on the top but thinner on the bottom. Things like that are things that Tom Ritchey specifically developed that were then adopted by other manufacturers later on. This bike represents kind of his latest. Obviously, it's 29-inch wheels, which is what a steel hardtail mountain bike is for most people these days. This bike has a Tange slider dropout, so it's got a derailleur hanger, but you could also run this bike as a single speed if you want. This is going to have what we're going to call WCS Logic 2 tubing, so it's the next generation of Tom's differentially and directionally butted tubing. This particular fillet brazed bike isn't going to be available to the general public, but we will have production TIG welded versions of these bikes available sometime in August this year, similar to the Team Paint Job Fade here. Same geometry, same look and feel of this bike. It'll just be TIG welded, and it'll be $999 MSRP.
Sean, talk to us a little bit about the head tube, and I noticed it looks like a normal frame with a space here as opposed to most 29er frames.
Yeah, it's a sharp eye, Francis. The head tube design is another one of the things out of Tom's bag of ideas. He's constantly coming up with interesting new concepts on cocktail napkins and then working them into fully production rideable bikes. This head tube, obviously it looks like an integrated head tube like what you're used to seeing on most carbon and aluminum bikes these days. Not typically done in steel because when you try it in steel it's a really heavy thing. The difference with this is there's a lot going on here. This is an example of what the head tube looks like kind of in its midway through production. This is a forged piece that's then CNC machined externally. This one doesn't have the internal step yet, but in forging it you can make a really strong, really light piece. The ID here of this tube is the same as a 1-inch head tube. So you can have 1 1/8 bearings, have a 1 1/8 steer tube fork, but you have a smaller head tube here. That saves weight over a standard 1 1/8 head tube like what you normally see. This design is about 80 grams lighter than a normal 1 1/8 steel head tube. Uses our standard drop-in bearings, and it also allows you to push the tubing all the way up to the very edges here, and that allows you to open the front of the triangle up a little bit, get a little bit more space here. Really important on a 29er where, you know, a lot of times head tubes are really small and you lose some strength. Increasing this bracing angle of the triangle here makes this juncture a lot stronger. And also the diameter of this tube itself, you can't really see it from this angle, but the size of this tube coming into the head tube, they butt pretty much just like this. So instead of having a much larger tube and a smaller tube butting up against it, this is a much closer size difference, so it's a stronger interface.
More surface area.
Exactly.
Well, wonderful, Sean, and pleased to hear that one of the old guards of the frame building world is innovating.
Oh yes,
with this P-29er.
Yeah, we're looking forward to getting it out there on the trails.